the agenda to speak clearly 4 to 5 inches from your microphone because it doesn't sound good like this.
Call the meeting to order. This is the Missoula Community Forum. We are meeting October 25th, 2018, and we meet in the City Council chambers at 140 West Pine. If you happen to be watching us on TV, I want you to know that you are more than welcome to come to this meeting on Pine Street, right near the Thomas Marr Bar, or if you're new to Missoula, you might call it the Thomas Meager Bar. What? Yes, is it, was it too far away from it? Okay, now, thank you. And so, I guess our first thing here is to call the roll call. And we'll start with Mark Voss over here.
Mark Voss, Southgate Triangle.
Ray Ayton, Far East Petty Canyon.
Colleen Beal, Lewis and Clark.
Jeff Stevens, South 39th Street Neighborhood Council.
Doug Grimm, Upper Rattlesnake.
Bert Lindler, Grant Creek.
Nick Schoenz, River Road.
Carol Garlington, Muscan Gully.
Julie Devlin, Rose Park.
David Michael Isaac, East Side, West Side.
Kate Laney, Two Rivers.
Couldn't hear you.
Kate Laney, Two Rivers.
Okay. Is there a quorum?
A quorum is present.
Okay, we seem to have a quorum, so we'll go to adopting the agenda for today's meeting. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
Ray Ayton, I suggest we adopt the agenda.
Is there a second?
Bert Lindler, second.
All right. Everyone in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. It passes. We'd like to next approve the minutes of September 27th, 2018. Is there anyone who would like to propose that we adopt the amendment, approve the minutes?
Jeff Stevens, South 39th Street Neighborhood Council. I move that the minutes be approved.
Is there a second to the motion?
Mark Voss, Southgate Triangle. Second.
Okay. Minutes. All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? And seeing none, it's approved. Passes. Next on the agenda, we have public comment from the people who who are in the audience who would like to come up here to the microphone, sit down in the chair, and talk to us. Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the next part of the agenda, and that is presentations. And we have a Garden City Solar Dehydrator presentation by Will. Come on up, please. And David Doody. Please introduce yourselves with your correct pronunciation.
I'm David Doody.
I'm Will Genetic.
So we've Will learned about a neighborhood grant, and he approached me with the idea of creating some solar dehydrators to help with the overabundance of fruit in the area. And also we have all these beautiful community gardens strewn throughout the community, and he said, wouldn't it be neat if we just put some solar dehydrators up and at all these gardens, and people could dehydrate their tomatoes, make pesto, do whatever they felt like doing with these things. And so Will Jeanette came up with the idea, and to implement this. We had one at our place of work, and we kind of use that as a model. And that one has worked really well, so we just use that as a model, and we got the grant funding and went ahead with the build.
Yeah, I'll just add to that, we both work together in slightly different roles at Bad Goat Forest Products underneath the Scott Street Bridge. They take local trees from local arborist work, and they do sustainable forest health thinning for fires and different types of ecological restoration. And they had one of these models, not one of these models, they had a solar dehydrator at the place where we work. And a few years ago, someone went around and asked a bunch of employees, chip in $50 and you'll be able to throw your fruit on this once we build this thing. And it's been phenomenally used since then, so we knew it was something that a lot of people would like to use. If you look into it, go on YouTube, there's a guy who recorded the guy who owns Bad Goat Forest Products, Mark Vandermeer, talking about his solar dehydrator, and there's something like 300,000 views of this video. So we knew it was something that would be popular if people had access to it.
Yeah, so basically we just wanted to implement a couple of these at these gardens, and we did all the research. We figured out it would cost $3,000 to build 2 of them, and we approached the city for the $2,000, and we got most of that. And what we first did was we walked through the neighborhoods in the north side and around the River Road farm, and we just kind of canvassed and said, hey, is this something you guys would be interested in doing, or at least support it? Would you support this, and would you use this if we built this? And we overwhelmingly had 98% said that's a great idea, we'd love to see that in our neighborhood. So they signed, and so that kind of helped us get the grant. And so yeah, we started building them, and basically it's just, you can flip to the next side. It's basically a way to utilize all that excess fruit that just goes to waste. You know, if you have a fruit tree, you're like, I got to harvest all this at one time. I don't have time to deal with this, right? There's just too much to do. And so we built it in such a state that it's large where you can mass dehydrate a bunch of food at once. So it doesn't take, weeks and weeks to do. You can get your harvest, put it on the trays in a day, and the next day it's dehydrated. So it's a way that you can just crank it through there, right? And the other thing is we're trying to use it as an educational tool. So we're going to have signs on it that say, here's how it's used, here's why it's a neat project. And it also enhances the appeal of Missoula as a sustainable place that, has some progressive ideas and also harnesses the power of the sun. All stuff that we feel is a necessary thing to step forward into the future. Simple technology, right?
Also just wanted to add that we recognize that Garden City Harvest is a real strength of this community, training people to grow food right here, and that they were an ideal place to have these things just because people can, on a small 15-foot by 15-foot plot, quickly produce a ton of food that they can be eating in the winter if they have an easy way to store it.
So the locations we've mentioned is the North Side Garden, Community Garden, and on that garden there is an apricot tree and cherry tree, and we placed that solar dehydrator right between the two so that it's easy transportation to that. And then the second one is at the flagship headquarters of Garden City Harvest, and it's to the north side of the new building. But as you see in the bottom of this, the future of these locations is wherever we can, because there's so much abundance. Everybody's got pear trees in their backyard. So if we could get them in city parks, all of the community gardens, we think it would really be a boon to the community and would help, feed people.
Okay, so I mentioned that one of these got built, a guy who works for the same organization, Lucas McGeever, found a slick PDF online and whipped one of these up. Another guy at our work did a YouTube video, it got like 300,000 views. and got on some websites of people promoting it, and sure enough, some guy in Texas who's a really talented designer heard about these from Permies.com, if you guys know that local website guy. Paul Wheaton is helped the guy we work with, Mark, produce this video. But anyways, it was really easy walking around with a picture of this thing saying, blam, here's what we're doing, here's the parts, and here's how it works. And it also just points to this project at the national level as just something people are really drawn to as the type of thing we all need to be doing in the future. You can see this diagram here. There's basically a thing filled with trays, and in front of it a solar collector. So that front triangle is uses the greenhouse effect. Sun comes in, it hits black, something, plywood, steel, we use steel. Hot air rises, it flows down over those trays and then out the chimney in the back. And we've got a few other conceptual diagrams to show here. That center picture is the solar gain part of the contraption before the polycarbonate, double wall polycarbonate see-through material is on it. The conceptual diagram on the right shows air heating up, going up, down, over the trays in the center, and then up out of the chimney, siphoning. This is really a solar desiccator. It dries food by blowing air over it rather than just heat, as it was done by the Blackfeet here for a long time when they would just cut up whatever they wanted to and string it between trees on windy days. So that picture on the left is maybe a little harder to conceptualize, but you see it's maybe inverted from the conceptual diagram on the right, but it shows you that back chimney zone where the air flows down over the trays and then up out of the back. And I think we have, here's an easier one to understand. That conceptual diagram on the right, this picture on the left is oriented the same way. So the solar gain goes in front of that first mesh screen down over the tray and then out that thin little chimney on the back. And there I am on the right there with the solar gain part of it.
Yeah, and so that's the one on the north side is in between those two fruit trees right there, and then there's just a picture of apricots being dried out, and so that's one of the trays, and we have 10 trays per unit, and so you can see you can really go through a lot of food, and it stores for a long time. And then we're just going to finish out with a couple photos. This is on the north side garden, looking out onto the garden. It's a beautiful setting, and you place them south facing so that they get the most sun. And you can also use them in the winter times. It's not a heat factor, it's an air movement factor. So that back chimney acts as convection and it pulls the air through. So it can be used year round. And then that's the one on the river road. It's just ideal settings, and we built them to look nice and to withstand the weather. We think it's a good thing, and we really thank the neighborhood council for the opportunity to do this and make Missoula an even better place than it is. All right, thanks guys.
You need to come back next year and apply for another grant.
Any comments? Any questions?
I do.
Okay.
How long does it take for a load? When you load it up, how many hours does it take to actually dry it?
If it's really well sealed and hot out, it can nuke stuff. Like, you should keep your eye on it and come back in like 4 hours. It's more like a day or a day and a half, which we recognize is perfect for people's watering schedules at these community gardens. Do you guys all know the Garden City Harvest Community Garden Plot Program?
Yeah.
So usually mid-level sun, about a day or a day and a half, and your fruit's dried.
And then they give them out with their CSAs at the end of the week? Do they give the dried fruit out?
So it's not actually part of the Garden City Harvest program. It's just the community garden program. So anywhere that these are placed, anybody in the community can use them.
Nice.
So it's just for the community garden members and people who have a fruit tree in their backyard. So it's not part of the Garden City Harvest program.
Thank you.
Yes.
Great idea.
Bert Lindler from Grant Creek. So where I live, you probably would need an electric fence to harvest your fruit the next day. So I would just encourage you, as you put more of these out around town, to be thinking about whether you're in the center of town where the bears don't go, or you're on the edges of town where bears show up, because it would be very unfortunate to have a bear find one of these.
My girlfriend used to do the Bear-Aware apple gathering program, and I think this type of thing should be in conjunction with that, where we don't just need cider, we also need dried apples. So there's so much of that that's available, and it was a blast cruising around neighborhoods and seeing how many people want to talk about doing things like this. It was almost unanimous support. I forgot to mention, I brought this book, Drawdown. I don't know if you guys have heard of this book, but it's the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. The number 3 most important issue in here is reducing food waste in terms of gigatons of CO2 produced. We're not saying that apples falling down on our trees, falling down in our streets from trees is going to change anything, but building good habits so that people have local food autonomy and aren't dependent on very stupidly and tragically shipping apples from South America to not get eaten and then sent to a dump. This is just something we can do. I think it's number 3 in a list of 100 right after changing how we store refrigerants at number 1, and number 2 is using wind power. So there's some really interesting counterintuitive things about here that I've heard almost no one say about climate change, and food waste is a huge, the 3rd largest easily categorizable part of why we're putting so much CO2 in the atmosphere.
Any other comments? Well, I'll just make some comments. When I got married, it was a real fad, and this would be more than 40 years ago, to make your own wine here in Missoula. And there'd be 100 entries at the fair with your wine. And then drying your own food just became a huge fan. And you could go to the hardware stores and buy stainless steel kits for big bucks, and they'd have a light bulb in the bottom. Some people looked at that, and they just got a big cardboard box and put trays in it with, that you put in your oven, and put your food on that and dry it with a light bulb. But sometimes people would lay the light bulb on the cardboard in the bottom, and the whole thing would catch fire. And there was, you learn by, anyway, I got the idea that I would take the plums off my tree, and I would take the trays that my wife baked cookies on, and I would take the plums and cut them in half and knock the pit out, and I would lay them mushy side down. Well, when they dry, they adhere so well to the stainless steel tray you can't get them off. So next time I turn them this way so that the skins were down against the tray. And I put them as tight as I could on the tray, and I put them in the oven. I turned the electric oven to the lowest point, and I put something in the door so that the door was propped open an inch or two so that the moisture would escape. And my first time, I didn't go back soon enough, and the plums were so hard that when I dumped them off into a glass jar, it sounded like I was filling the jar with marbles. There's no way a person could have eaten those things. They were so hard. So my favorite drink was Coca-Cola, and I was sitting there looking at this jar that I've spent so much time getting, and I just dumped my Coca-Cola into the jar, and I let it sit for about a day, and then I took them out. They swelled up. I put them back on the tray, and I dried them much shorter time period. Took them to the fair. I won first prize. So, anyone else have comments? Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Or we have one more.
So, two just quick questions. Scalability. Do people do these individually too on a much smaller scale? Have you seen anybody do that? And, let's see. And the second one was, are the trays solid, like Doug was describing, steel, or are they graded?
Yeah, so first question is, yeah, you could definitely do this on a smaller scale. You know, I have a electric dehydrator that's round, and it just buzzes, makes a bunch of noise. It just annoys me. So this is a nice way where it's outside, it's quiet. You don't have to have that in your house. It doesn't take any power. But I would assume that there's a smaller, like you can't go real small because, you know, just building it would be more resources than it would be worth to dehydrate just one tray, right? So it's one of those things where it's mostly for, you know, mass production. It just makes more sense to do it mass production. But for the second question, the trays, it's basically a frame, a wooden frame, and there's netting in between, so it allows air to flow through, and so food grade netting, and you know, you just put the fruit skin side down, and you know, so it allows all that air to move through. If it was a solid base, it would just kind of stop the air, and so it wouldn't work as well. So yeah.
I've heard some people use cardboard boxes. I think there's a trillion ways you could do this design. This is just like a beefed up, heavy duty, outdoors one. But yeah, you could do the same concept many ways.
Sorry, Julie, Devlin Rose Park. Is there any plan for Garden City Harvest to put them in all their community gardens? I think it's a great idea. They are kind of expensive though, huh?
Well, you know, I think if you could produce them for cheaper if you produced, you know, 20 at a time. You could definitely reduce the cost. But as of right now, they want to see how they work. You know, it's definitely on their radar. But we just built these two, and so we'll have to wait and see.
Good
you know,
luck.
we kind of just said, you know, what's a good way to make a difference in our community? In something that's really tangible and will help a lot of people. You know, we know that there's a lot of wealthy people in Missoula, but there's also a lot of unwealthy people, and food security is a major thing. You know, just for a kid to have a healthy meal, they're going to do that much better in school. So for us, it was, let's just get some out there and, you know, make a small difference right now.
Good.
We have one over here.
Carol Garlington, Moose Can Gully. How long have they been in operation?
We finished them up a month ago. And so our initial goal was to have them out before the community gardens started up in April. And we got the grant. I believe the grant was awarded in like January, right? And so we built the frame real quick. The frame was put up, but you know, we just did this in our volunteer spare time, so we didn't make any money doing this, and so it took a back seat, unfortunately. And you know, we did it when we had spare time. So yeah, they kind of hit the tail end of the harvest season. Most of the fruit had already ripened on the trees, but people did. You know, when we went to the North Side Garden, one of the original founders of the North Side Garden came up to us. Said, "What are you guys doing?" When we initially were thinking about doing this, and we said, "Yeah, we're going to put one of these dehydrators in here." And she said, "That's fantastic. That was initially one of the plans starting up this garden. That was one of the goals, is to have something like that." And so she was super excited, and she helped. She was one of our references to get this in there. But yeah, they've only been in operation for a month. And we don't have any follow-up like data collection. You know, we're gonna put signs up and, you know, say, you know, here's how it's used. Different types of fruit will take different times. But I think that, we're kind of just, we know from experience of the one that we've used that people love it. You know, if anybody has a backyard fruit tree, they don't know what to do with it, and they hear of it, they're like, hey, can we do that? And it's a day later, all their food's done. So there's not going to be a lack of use, for sure. Yes.
A comment over here?
Yeah, Missoula needs viable businesses. They need business and hire employees, right? So how can this organization, association, help you build your business?
Oh, how can you guys help us build the business? I think would be to advertise with this community grant program. Hey, think about ways to help your community, and I would say probably number one would be talking to young people who are passionate about. A lot of them are very interested in one thing, and they may not have the resources or the know-how. So to advertise, target young kids, even high schoolers would love pitching in on this stuff. I'm sure you could get a team of volunteers to really crank some of these out for the community. So I think that would be number one, would just be education of the community.
Do you have any literature available that we could pass out?
We could definitely get you some literature. We did not bring any with us, but we could easily put a packet together and pass it to you guys, for sure.
And I think the food bank could use those they have an Empower, have you gone to talk to them? Empower Kids program, and they give kids food to take for the weekend, so dried fruit would be.
Yeah, that's
Kids
a great
love
great
dried fruit.
idea. I think that it's just endless opportunities and ways to utilize this. So any idea is a good idea.
Any other comments? Jane? My comment would be that in order to fill a tray, it takes an awful long time, and then you look at what you get, and you only have about, seems like a third or a fourth of what you started with.
That's the point.
Yeah. I think it's basically utilizing fruit and not letting it go to waste is the
Yes.
point. And so instead of just composting apples that fall on the ground, turn them into food. We all have a couple 10 minutes a day that we waste, right? So take a day, dehydrate some food, bring it to the food bank, give it to the neighbors. It's just kind of a simple solution to some complex problems.
Well, it seems like you've sparked a lot of interest here. Thank you very much for coming.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Next, we have the Open Space Bond and Open Space Stewardship Levy. Elizabeth Erickson, who is the Open Space Program Manager.
Good evening. Now it's on. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. I would like to update all of you on some open space conservation matters that are happening in our community right now. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the City of Missoula has an open space program webpage, and I would welcome all of you and recommend that you all take some time to check it out. We have a lot of great background information on projects that the city has been involved with in the past using both bond funds and other funds to support open space conservation. The city first had an open space bond in 1980, and then we had a second one in 1995, and then in 2006, Missoula County had its first countywide open space bond. And in 2018 now, I will go to this page to provide some additional background information. There is a proposal for a renewed countywide open space bond and also a citywide mill levy. And I just want to provide some background information on what those two things are and why they're distinct and what that funding could be used for. As I mentioned, the City of Missoula has had multiple open space bonds in the past, and the 2006 bond is almost depleted. It's been used to protect thousands and thousands of acres throughout the county. And on the ballot for the November 2018 election, there will be two separate questions. If you live in the Missoula, just outside of city limits in the county, you'll have the question for a $15 million countywide general obligation bond, which would effectively renew that 2006 funding source. And if you live within the city limits, you will have two questions on page 3 of the ballot. The second question is for a citywide mill levy, a conservation land stewardship levy. And the main distinction between those two sources of funding is that bond funds are fairly restricted in what they can be used for. They can generally be used for land acquisition and for capital improvement projects. And so a capital improvement project is a project that starts and it ends. And those projects can only be accomplished on open space land. So the proposal is for an open space bond. But what happens is when the city acquires land, as you can see here, we have over 4,500 acres of land that the city actually owns and manages for public access, wildlife habitat, recreation. It costs money to manage those lands. And so bond funds cannot be used for that cyclical maintenance, as we call it, or that routine ongoing maintenance. And so the proposal for the city mill levy is to have funding for the conservation lands management program that would include things such as maintaining trails, reconstructing trails, managing trailheads, putting in amenities that our community enjoys on our conservation lands, such as signs, dog poop bags, benches, various infrastructure, things like that. And that is an ongoing need, and not just those types of projects, but also spraying for weeds, sending crews out to reconstruct trails that are eroded. So there's just this regular ongoing land management requirement. And that is the purpose for having two separate questions on the ballot in 2018. And I mostly just want to bring everybody's attention to this website and let you know that there's a lot of information here that's available. It talks about specific projects that the city has done, and it also talks about general priorities moving forward. We are in the process of redrafting the city's open space plan. It was originally drafted in 1995. It was updated in 2006. And now we are in the process of updating, I'm sorry, I keep scrolling. I'm trying to find here it is. We're in the process of updating that open space plan as part of a larger parks, recreation, open space, and trails plan. We call it the PROST plan. And if you want to find out information about that process, it's here. And that planning process, it's going to go through a whole host of public meetings once we actually have a draft that's available to share with the public. But it does describe and articulate broad priorities for the city within the open space planning region. Additionally, the resolutions that the city council and the county commissioners signed in order to put the bond and the levy on the ballot, those were two things that had to go to our elected officials to actually even appear on the ballot. Those resolutions contain other just general broad brushstroke priorities. That said, any bond expenditure has always gone through our Open Space Advisory Committee, or in the county, the Open Lands Committee, and so it goes through a lot of public process at the project level. I'm happy to answer additional questions, provide other information. I welcome and encourage you all to peruse our open space website, and yes.
Right. So how are you going to inform the public about when this workshop begins? Some of us are on like the Parks and Recs through the city email listserv. Is that one of the ways? Are there any other ways?
Yes, so when we hold public meetings related to the Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Plan, those go out through all the notification channels. And those will typically go through our existing boards. So the city's Conservation Lands Advisory Committee, which is an advisory committee to the Parks and Rec Board, the city's Open Space Advisory Committee, and then the Parks and Conservation Committee to City Council, and then the full City Council. And so those are kind of the channels through the city. There will also be some public meetings through the Planning Board, County Commissioners, and I think that's it. But those will all be publicly noticed. So I think it should go out on the Notify Me web blast. I'm not sure how that works, but the emails that go out, it'll be in SIRE, which is where you can access those documents. So there should be a lot of opportunity to get involved when we have those public meetings. And that'll hopefully start happening late winter into early spring, with the potential for putting a draft plan out for public comment before we have those public meetings.
And of course, anything that goes out like that, Karen gets a hold of it and puts it in the digest, which goes out every Friday.
Oh, great. That's good to know.
Do you have any other comments, questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have design excellence, standards and guidelines in commercial and downtown corridors, as presented by Lavelle Means, but doesn't.
Nope, not Laval Means tonight. My name's Ben Brewer. I'll be talking about design excellence somewhat for you, and then we have a kind of a connected follow-up presentation by my coworker Tom Zavitz on a related rezoning. So I'm going to follow Elizabeth's lead here and start off talking to you tonight about, with our presenting our web page for this project. We've been working on this for almost 2 years now. It's called the Design Excellence Project, and it is a fairly complicated project. There's a lot to it, but there's a lot of information on this website that you can go to. So I just want to draw your attention to that. The web address is www.missoulaDesignExcellence.org, and just definitely encourage anyone who's interested in diving a little more into this project to go here. There's the documents that are being proposed that describe the project, and the overlay, the zoning overlay that it involves, and potential standards and whatnot for commercial development are here as the first document. There are some associated amendments to Title 20, our zoning code here. There's the district map, which would show the boundaries of the overlay, and then an accompanying design manual, which I'll talk about more here in just a second. But I want to draw your attention to this website, and there are other related documents listed on the right here as well that have more information. But otherwise, this is something that I believe has been presented on to this group before. I think it's been a little while, so I'm looking forward to catching you up to speed on where things are currently. We are in our final stages of the planning process for this. We have opened the most recent and what we hope is the final public comment phase of the project. We had a series of open houses on October 16th, a week or two ago, and we are taking this to the planning board for their hearing and consideration next Tuesday, October 30th. So I'm going to go through some of the boards basically that we used at our open house. I'm not going to go through everything that's on the boards. This is another material that's on the web page that you can go to and read through more thoroughly if you want to. But and if you have any questions along the way, you're more than welcome to ask as I go along. So why are we doing this? We, it is a response to concern by the community that was brought to City Council with regard to some development that has been occurring around the city. But also it is meant to support flexible design approaches and it is meant to be in line with Missoula's eclectic qualities. It is a City Council initiated project, we've been going from there. There has been a lot of process. I'm not going to go into that too much tonight, but we had a series of community workshops and whatnot over the last 2 years, that involved public comment and working groups. And the first phase of that worked towards developing kind of a strategy and a strategy report, and that was the basis for developing the proposal that we have now, which is the zoning overlay. The basic strategy here that was developed during the planning process is based in developing a vision for primarily commercial development within specific areas of Missoula. So that's primarily the greater downtown area and along identified commercial corridors. And the approach to managing design in those areas was kind of a two-tiered approach based on new zoning standards. And then on top of that, a series of design guidelines that allow for that flexibility that was meant to be a part of the program. And then we've also, and which was part of the discussion along the way as well, there is a series of incentives for certain types of development in certain areas of the overlay that are included in the program. Just to quickly go over what is not included in this or is not affected by this, this is not a requirement to change anything without a decision to change something on the part of a property owner. That is to say that this only applies to new development or redevelopment. It's not requiring that anybody change or develop a property. This does not change the base zoning district. So it doesn't affect the uses involved or that are applied to a property already. And it does not change the densities allowed in a property or in the base zoning district of a property. And this does not apply to detached houses, duplexes, or townhouse developments. So what is being proposed? Basically, this is a little technical, but it kind of breaks down into that there will be language added to the zoning, and this is the overlay document that is the first document on the website there that at the top of the website page. This is the overlay document, and this is basically what would be inserted into the zoning code. There are a few other changes to the existing zoning in order to accommodate this. And then the other main component is a map amendment, and that is basically applying the overlay boundary to the map. The overlay is broken up into 5 sub-districts, and those are between downtown and the corridors. And so that's the general approach and what's being proposed now that we're taking comment on. This is the overlay boundary, the overlay map itself as is being proposed currently. Again, there's a bigger, more readable version of this on the website. Basically, this is what we're proposing. Again, it's broken up into sub-districts. The legend here identifies what those are by color. And so based on which corridor type you're in or downtown subdistrict you're in, the overlay contains a different set of standards that match that overlay subdistrict. We've worked hard to do our best to implement this or make sure that this fits into our existing codes and our existing processes as much as possible. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel completely, but it does apply the current zoning that we have now differently in the overlay in some cases, and there's more information on that. Again, I'm happy to answer any questions on what that might cover. And then the final thing to just be aware of is that part of the overlay program involves what's called the Design Excellence Manual, and that is a separate document. It's not part of the zoning, but it's referred to by the zoning, and that's meant to guide development to use. Basically, it has a series of best practices. They're not requirements, they're guidance, and there will be the ability and flexibility to meet those guidelines when they apply to a project in different ways. This is just an example of kind of how this would work. So this is the downtown inner core subdistrict. It's one of the 5 downtown subdistricts. In this document, in the zoning overlay, there is a section for the standards that apply to the downtown inner core subdistrict. It lists, specifically what they are here. It's just a 2-page section. There's a 2-page section for each subdistrict. And then for more information, you can look back to the general section in the overlay.
Question. The downtown core overlay, is it correct to say that parking is not required anywhere there?
Well, currently in the zoning, excuse me, we have a zoning district called the Central Business District, the CBD, and this sub-district is only in that zoning district, and then it extends kind of basically around like this, and that's the only zoning district in town that we do not have parking requirements. So there are other downtown sub-districts that are still include parking requirements that are based on the base zoning district, and Title 20 is what's in there now. There are potential incentives and included in the list of incentives that are available for reductions in parking. So I can go over those as well when we in a little bit here. We've talked about the guidelines a little bit, but this is another kind of board that's available to go over how the guidelines might be used when they're reviewed. One of the big components of this project is that there is a new type of review process that would be utilized for some projects, and that would be triggered based on either the location, so in certain sub-districts, or based on a size threshold or different factors like that. And so that process is called Design Excellence Review, and that would be the point where projects would also be referring to the suggested guidelines in the design manual. Like I said, there is a list of, or a package of incentives that we're proposing. Some of them would apply in some sub-districts. The bulk of them are parking related. And basically they would relate to the parking requirement that's calculated on the current zoning. And so there are some new ideas in there, and some extensions of parking, the types of parking reductions that are in the zoning already. And the last thing to kind of understand about how this all ties together is that there is something called a design variation process as well. So the idea basically is that the overlay includes new zoning standards. There's a higher level of review called design excellence review, which is based on design guidelines. And when you're at that process of review, you have the ability to vary from the zoning standards based on those guidelines. So there is additional flexibility there for the specific standards that apply to your zoning, to your sub-district. I just want to touch on as well that this project is, as you saw, it applies to a large area of the city, and there are some related zoning amendments that we're also working on in relation to making the design excellence overlay work. So one of those is a repeal of a different zoning overlay, which is called the EC, Enterprise Commercial Overlay, and that's primarily only in kind of the North Reserve Street area. It's a zoning overlay that goes back to Title 19, which is the previous zoning code that was changed in 2009 to the current Title 20 zoning. And it's something that it's unnecessary in a lot of ways. A lot of the standards that are in that overlay are covered already in Title 20, and then will be better covered in the design excellence overlay. And so that's a project that's ongoing, and I'm happy to answer any questions about that. And then we do also have a rezoning project for the Special District Number 2 along Reserve Street that we're going to hear more about in just a second. But I'm happy to answer any questions you have about anything I've been talking about so far.
I should go back to the introduction slide.
Sure. Which one?
The introduction slide. Introduction. There. I commend you for putting this plan together. You put a lot of work into it. I can see that. But first question is, you say you respond to community concerns about development. What are the major or main community concerns about development?
Yeah, that's a great question. Why are we doing this, and what is it a reaction to, and what is it trying to accomplish? And as I'm sure all of you are aware, Missoula has experienced an unprecedented level of development in the last few years, last 4 or 5 years. It's brought on a lot of change, and it's not all change that people in the community have been comfortable with, or people in some parts of the community have been comfortable with. And there's been various levels of either pushback to that or concern that Missoula is changing not in a way that people want to see. And so this kind of came out of I think concern voiced to council about that. There are specific developments that help move that conversation along for sure, but in general I think that given the amount of new development and changes happening in the community, there's concern about how that might continue, and that we have some kind of consideration for the character of what people think Missoula is and wants to be.
So my question would be, how did you come about determining what the community concerns were? What, city council meetings, is that it? Was that?
No, so, and it's a little hard to see, the timeline on that slide there kind of lays out the phases of this project. So the first phase involved 2 separate workshops, and that was after this was initiated, and there was an additional before that kind of was the consideration for whether this should be initiated or not. And so there's been outreach and there's been process from the beginning to try to bring in groups that are interested, groups that are stakeholders and whatnot. And so, there has been involvement along the way from various groups. Some has not lasted through the whole process, but the intent was to reach out and to get comment and ideas and help have that shape that strategy development, and that's what's guiding this proposal.
So you're saying that a lot of the people, citizens, have had input into this. It's not just a developer coming up with a great plan and going to try and sell it to the public?
I'm sorry, can you say that again? Can you say that again? I didn't quite catch the
Okay,
question.
you're saying that the citizens, the people, had a lot of input into this plan that you're developing. It's not just a developer developing a plan and going to sell it to the public?
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. At least there obviously we wanted to include the development community as well, as this is something that affects them, and but we had citizen groups and neighborhood groups and whatnot is involved as well.
Okay.
Carol, can you give me a specific example of some of the concerns? I didn't. Yes, it is on. I didn't get an earlier presentation. What kinds of issues were brought up?
Oops, sorry. Well, I don't want to name them specifically, but there are projects around town that have gotten a lot of concern, and I think there's concern about franchise development that might not be in character or might be kind of generic or not taking into account the character of the town. In some ways this gives the community more of an ability to I don't know if protection is the right word, but are the values that affect the neighboring properties and the interaction with the public spaces and whatnot. The part of the guiding principle of this is that the context of a specific location is taken into account, and it's not just a piecemeal, site-by-site form of design, but that it takes into account where it is and what is surrounding it.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm interested in some specifics. Like, for example, what difference would this plan have made in the development of the Missoula Mercantile Marriott project? How would it have affected that project if these proposed standards had been in place when that was being built?
Sure. So currently, we have no design standards for buildings downtown. We have in the zoning now, there are recent design standards for some commercial development that's of a smaller scale, and there has for a while kind of been what's known as the enterprise commercial standards, and that's for larger development over 30,000 square feet. That's kind of better known probably as the big box store type of standards for larger sites like that, but neither of those apply in the downtown area. So currently we do not have much involvement or say or anything like that with development that occurs in the downtown area specifically. So, especially with that example, this is something that would enable the city to have, first of all, a set of standards that a project would need to meet that are based on the character and the context of the downtown area and are based on the type of development that's been happening there historically, and a series of best practices, practices guidelines that we can look to and make sure that a development is looking at as well and following.
Would that building look any different today if it was built under the standards you're proposing?
Yeah, so I don't have a specific breakdown of that, unfortunately, but there are elements that I think are would probably be there. One of the things to be aware of in this is that we are proposing minimum amounts of materials, especially in the downtown use of brick. So it would probably have more brick on it than it does now, even though that in itself was not in the first design of the marks, is my understanding. So that's a change, but there are articulation and modulation types of standards, and then with the downtown. Really, probably what buildings are going to be looking at is this design manual that has a really comprehensive set of design guidelines that can get into the kind of detail and whatnot that are appropriate for a building of that location. And
Could you define articulation and modulation?
Modulation is, at least in this program, is recesses and changes in the building form, so the overall envelope of the building, and articulation has changes in the facade, I guess I would say. So a modulation, you might have something like a required step back, or where the building needs to be moved in for at a certain distance, or move back on the vertical side at a certain height for a portion of the building. And articulation would be something like balconies, a certain amount of balconies or protrusions from the facade or the front of the face of the building.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Please state your name.
Julie Devlin. So the Florence building will be protected because it's on the historic register?
Yeah, this does not supersede historic.
Can they change it?
Can they change the?
Features, the exterior. They're going to change the interior, but is it protected?
Yeah. So the historic preservation program that supersedes our city regulations. I think it's a federal program that is outside of the bounds of this program.
What about the library? Do you have any input on that design?
As far as will this be applied to that, or?
As far as what?
Are you asking if this would be applied to the library?
Will you have any design?
So my understanding is that the library's already gone through for permitting, and the design there is this will probably be adopted after the fact, or not at a point where it would apply to the library, at least as far as the new construction. If they come around in however long and did an addition or something like that, then this would apply.
Just one moment, please. You must state your name first.
Okay, David Michelangelo.
This close.
Okay, so the library appears to be a community concern, right?
It was part of the conversation. I think there's a lot of interest in the library and design associated with it, yeah.
They appeared before this body a couple times, but not when you were here. But
I'm saying it's apparent that it is a concern of the community.
Microphone, please. Speak into the microphone because it has to be recorded.
Because you're supposed to respond to community concerns, and apparently the library is a community concern.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I think the library is in the conversation. You know, people are interested in design, and that people have strong feelings about it in some cases. And this is meant to build on that and to express it.
Okay, thank you
I'm
very
not sure
much.
if that answered your question.
Thank you very much. Ben Brewer.
Thank you. And my coworker Tom Zavitz is up next here.
This is Tom Zavitz, Missoula Senior Planner.
Yes, Tom Zavitz, Development Services, and this project, which is the rezoning of Special District 2, is needed in order to allow the overlay that is going to be, that Ben talked about, that is going to go over all the major commercial corridors in Missoula. Because this is a zoning district that has a review process that's somewhat similar to the design excellence overlay, those two processes can't work together. They're both a review process that concerns design, but they both go to different bodies for approval. So in order to make the base zoning work with that design excellence overlay, we're proposing to change that. And so SD2 has a lot of history. It is a zoning district that came into existence in 1982 in the county when the Reserve Street began to be improved, and the folks who lived out there were concerned that it would have a very fast and large impact on the neighborhood. And so they created this zoning district called Special District Number 2, and it is not like a standard zoning district in that there's a review process that has to be followed and public hearings held. So I'm going to talk about what SD2 does too. Some of the basics of it is that it requires large setbacks from the street for commercial development, and that's 45 feet, and it requires a 100-foot setback from the Reserve Street for residential development. The other thing is that it allows single family and duplexes by right. So those things are okay to do, but anything more intense than that requires a scoring system, that you go through a scoring system and then review by either a zoning officer or the Board of Adjustment to get approval for your use that you plan to do there. And it's very confusing, and in fact, changing this SD2 district has been on our back burner for maybe as much as 10 years. So back to the history. So in 1994, when the city annexed that western part of the city along Reserve Street, they adopted the SD2 district into the city and called it the city SD2 district. So basically it was the same standards, but now it was a city zoning district. Okay, so in order to make this area work with the Design Excellence Project, which really it has very similar goals as to what the SD2 district did, and it talked about design and impact to the neighborhood of development. So in deciding what this should be rezoned to, some basic zoning districts that we already use, we are proposing 3 different types of zoning districts to take the place of SD2. And I'm going to go back to that, but these are the proposed zoning districts. We've held an open house out in the neighborhood about a month ago, and we took comment there, and we've done 2 mailings to the landowners and everyone within 150 feet. And these are the zoning districts that we're proposing to not exactly mirror or copy what SD2 was, but to bring us a little bit forward into the future and match what the intensity of the road brings, which is, probably the most intensely used street in Missoula. It's an area that in many places, I think if you used a textbook and said, what kind of zoning belongs along a street like that, you would say something like intense commercial district, like a C2. So we didn't do that in proposing new zoning for that area. We tried to forge a compromise and choose zoning districts that did the same kinds of things that the SD2 district did. But we also took into account what has been built there since, and that's been, a lot of commercial development. In 1982, this was primarily a low-density residential area, and since then, since the road was developed, more people have been selling their residential properties, and they've been, used to make commercial uses happen along there, which are typically appropriate. Now, the context of the area should always be taken into consideration, and what we did here was take the context of what the SD2 district did, along with what is there now, what does our growth policy land use designation map say, what are the surrounding uses, and we took several factors into consideration when we chose these 3 districts. Now, this does not copy what the SD2 was. This allows more density in the sort of fuchsia, dark pink, more residential density there, because although it's a commercial zoning district, we have a pyramidal zoning system in Missoula, and so our commercial districts allow multifamily or denser residential development. So in zoning it commercial, there will be an allowance for multifamily. We're thinking that not a lot of that would happen just because of the present circumstances, including that a lot of it's already built out and has newer buildings on it and are not likely to change in the near future. Some of them will or may, it's hard to say, but there are a lot of factors that go into what will happen there. The B3, which is the light tan, that one has a residential density allowance of it's 21 units per acre, which is about the same as the SD2, which was 16 units per acre. And then in the B2, which is another sort of neighborhood business type of zoning, which allows a mix of uses, that allows, again, back up to the 43 units per acre residential density. So on some of those parcels, it's possible that you could see some apartment complexes. We're feeling like because of the parcel sizes, the access problems that they might have, and again, the fact that there's already fairly new development on most of that we might see some of that, but and that's okay too, because we want to see a mix of uses in these kinds of places. Right now, it's really automobile oriented and not a very friendly place to walk around. With this new overlay that Ben was talking about, we're going to have standards that start to take into consideration walkability, the sort of friendliness of the placement of the buildings along the street. Do they have a door that faces the street that you can walk to? And they're going to be asking for development that is much more pedestrian friendly than you would see with a strictly like a C2 zoning that really the street calls for because of the intensity, because of the traffic that you see on it. But again, we're not doing that. We're trying to strike a compromise here to preserve some of what SD2 did, which was to have a very wide avenue with some green space, and a mix of uses, not just uses. And that's why you don't see right now fast food places. Those are automobile oriented. You don't see large box stores. You don't see car lots, things like that. None of these zoning districts allow those things either. So we didn't go right straight, let's just change this and go straight to C2. We tried to do a compromise again, and we looked really parcel by parcel throughout this, and then sort of looked at it again from afar and decided what to propose. So we've put this in front of the landowners and the residents, and so far we've had some comments about, boy, I've lived here all this time, I really would like to see the SD2 stay. And then the landowners, because the setbacks are so wide, you can see that there are a lot of smaller parcels along here. Well, it hasn't allowed them to, their neighbors might sell to commercial and get a commercial use going, but they can't because their parcel is so small. And then there's a 45-foot setback, which is kind of unheard of in any other zoning district we have. They can't do anything on that parcel. They can't sell it. And you can probably think of 2 or 3 parcels along there that aren't being developed right now, and the main reason is that the setbacks from the street are so large that they can't get a building and the correct amount of parking there. So they've been sitting idle for most of that time. This would reduce that setback a little bit. Part of the problem is that there's a 30-foot state right-of-way on either side of Reserve Street. So no matter what happens, you're always going to have that. And then it turns out that with the Design Excellence Project, you're going to add another 15 feet. So in a lot of ways, we're getting right back to that same setback that the SD2 had of 45 feet, which is not great for getting buildings closer to the street, which slows traffic and makes it more friendly. On the other hand, the SD2 wanted a wide avenue with green space. So again, it's been really difficult to strike a compromise here that is going to make everybody happy. But this is what we've arrived at this point. We're going to Planning Board the same time that the Design Excellence is on next Tuesday night, October 30th. And we plan to follow the same schedule that the Design Excellence Project does in public process. So this is really the basics of where we are right now. And this could change as we move through the process as landowners come forward. We haven't had that many landowners come forward and say, I want to change what you're proposing. So far it's kind of looking like this might be pretty close to what you see in the end. But anyway, so this is a pretty big zoning change for Missoula. We haven't seen something like this in a while, but it's being done for a few reasons. And ultimately, we needed, in order to have these nice building standards that Design Excellence gives us, we had to find a base zoning that would work with that. So that's it. I'm guessing you don't want to hear much more on this, but I'll answer questions.
Well, thank you very much, Tom Mazavitz, Missoula Senior Planner. You have one question. Yes.
So we'll keep it short. Tom, but I would like you to explain a little bit to people about the parking. I mean, if you're going to have very limited setbacks from the road, but people are going to be driving to your location, where is the parking?
Well, in the case, with Design Excellence, it's going to allow that to be negotiated. And ultimately, we're doing this so we can have those Design Excellence standards there. I think for pedestrian friendliness, you always like to have the parking either on the side or in the back. But, part of the problem here is that a lot of these are already built out with fairly new development, so, and they have the parking in the front. I think with design excellence, we're going to try to see the parking in other places aside from right in front, just to make it more, less auto-intensive looking and more
Yeah,
friendly
and
to pedestrians.
I think Ben addressed incentives.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So that would be back to.
Yeah, specifically for Reserve Street, those parking reduction incentives do not apply there. That's not one of the corridor sub-districts that those are available. And like Tom was saying, a lot of the sub-districts in design excellence, they require parking in the back or on the side. Reserve Street, it's not specifically required. You can park in front of the building if that works with the other standards and whatnot.
Might the speed limit be lowered to encourage people to be able to pull off?
This is a state highway, and the Montana Department of Transportation monitors what's going on there, and I really, this won't change the speed limits at all. One of the things that we know in planning is that the more structures there are closer to the street, people tend to drive slower. And so, reducing those wide setbacks would help with that. But because of that wide state right-of-way of 30 feet on either side, and it seems like we're not going to be able to be at that point where we see buildings right up against the property lines along Reserve Street right now, or anytime soon. In this area, that's different in other areas, but right here.
Because it's also another way to
Yep.
slow down traffic.
What is,
Your name, please?
David Michael Isaac. What is retail residential?
So retail residential.
And B2?
B2, community business type of zone, so it allows light types of commercial business uses, and it also allows higher density developments like apartments or condominiums and things like that. So it's B2 is sort of like it's one of the sort of transitional zoning districts we use where an area might be going from residential to commercial like this one is right now. And it's meant to have all kinds of uses mostly next to each other.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And next we have Neighborhood Council and Community Forum, Local Government Citizens Academy. Jane?
That would be me. Okay, I've been working on organizing a local government citizens academy for a number of years now, and I was kind of spurred on by Heather Harp, City Council member, Ward 3. She went and asked Marty Rabine about having that, and Marty said, you need to talk to Jane because she's been working on this for a while. I've had some instability in my office that has not allowed me to take on this project, but now I have great stability. Thank you, Karen and Marley. And so anyway, I decided to tackle this project. I am going to ask for your support because the way I have this is it's sponsored by the Office of Neighborhoods and Community Forum with special help from Gwen Jones and Heather Harp. So we're going to have sessions on Tuesdays that run from 7 to 9 p.m. starting January the 15th through March the 5th. There will be light refreshments provided, and the March 5th session will be pizza or something like that, and that will be graduation. So I'll just run through some of the things that we're planning on doing in this educational endeavor. Most of these have confirmed already, by the way. The first one will be kickoff with neighborhood councils and community forum. Then we'll have Mark Thane from Missoula County Public Schools. That'll be at Hellgate High School. The next week, city government and citizen engagement. That'll be right here. How city government works, guiding principles and vision. The mayor, city council, and Judge Jenks, the three branches of government. January 29th, keeping safe in Missoula, tour a fire station, meet the men and women who protect our city, and how the police and fire department work together. The chief of the fire department and two assistant chiefs, and the police department chief, Mike Brady, will all be there. It'll be at Fire Station 4, and that's confirmed. Recreating and quality of life in Missoula, a presentation on information in Parks and Rec. Donna Gockler is confirmed, and the Department of Housing and Community Development with Aaron Pehan and Colin Woodrow confirmed. February 12th, Public Works, wastewater treatment plant, storm sewer, utility, streets, and Missoula water. Where does it all come from and where does it go? What's going on in Missoula streets? Dennis Bowman, Brian Hensel are confirmed, and we're going to be having that at Missoula Water over on Broadway. February 19th, creating the vision and making it happen, development services and MRA future vision and present and upcoming projects. This isn't confirmed yet, but there's some interested in it and should be. February 26th, Missoula County. What does the county do differently than the city, and what are our joint ventures like Animal Control, Health Department? 2 county commissioners have confirmed, and the Missoula County Courthouse, we're going to have it there. That's confirmed. And the final one will be all about taxes. Somebody from the Finance Department will present, also with Dale Bickle, and I haven't picked a place yet for that. We're planning on doing a press release. We have applications that ask things such as, are you a City of Missoula registered voter? What is your involvement in the City of Missoula? What do you hope to gain from the Citizens Academy? And are you able to commit for the full 8 weeks? And we are limiting it to 35 people. And so I would hope that you might take a vote and ask me any questions that you want and support this. And will be well publicized.
You want to vote on this? Can you handle this for me?
Sure. Is there a motion to support this local government citizens academy effort?
So moved. Ray Ayton.
Is there a second?
Jeff Stevens, I'll second that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Thank you very much. This will get Community Forum's name out there too. This is wonderful.
Jane, will you put that schedule online?
I'll do it when everything's confirmed. I'm not ready yet. Things could change. It's all the way till March. But we are planning on putting the application out after the elections, so people can relax a little and think about it.
You mean out just online or
Yes.
newspaper?
Yeah, yes. Excuse me? Oh, yeah, of course. It'll be as well publicized as possible.
Okay, next on the agenda is a neighborhood project and reallocated funds. Jane?
Okay, this is a request from Community Forum for $2,846.50. This is usually an annual request. It's been approved by Community Forum leadership team, as has the Academy, which we just voted on. So it's for tabling supplies to fund the Academy, for training, and for the bus tour and the Outstanding Neighborhood Volunteer of the Year award. So a few tabling expenses we have. We're going to need a new tablecloth, just tabling expenses, some marketing things such as chapstick. We're going to need some new maps. We're doing annexations, and we need a two-sided banner. Those are just some of the expenses. And there will be remaining in reallocated funds after this amount is approved, there will be $5,293.50 still remaining there. Any questions?
Jane, would you handle the vote?
Okay. Is there a motion to approve this request for reallocated funds for community forum?
So moved, Bert Lindler, Grant Creek.
Thank you, Bert. Is there a second?
Jeff Stevens, I will second that motion.
Jeff Stevens, thank you very much. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Wonderful. I can move forward now. Thank you.
Okay, we will move now to this page 2, special events. No report? Okay, on reports, a staff report. Jane Kelly?
Well, you've heard a lot from me already. That's almost like my whole staff report. The neighborhood project funds closed today, and we will have to tally them up, and we'll be moving forward on that. We started to make copies, and we'll be sending it out to the departments for approval and comments and things.
Stories and Stones? We had a lot of fun at Stories and Stones.
I guess I could talk about that. I think we collected 150 new email addresses, which is wonderful, and it was a great day. It was beautiful weather, and we love doing it every year. And Stories and Stones is basically at the cemetery where we have historical interpreters. People come and they give the story of the people who are buried there, and you go from group to group, and you can hear wonderful stories there. Thanks, Doug.
Yeah, thank you, Jane. Next report is from Karen Gasvoda.
Okay, I have a community forum moderator sign-up sheet. I sent it around last time. I've updated the dates to make sure I have the right year on there, and we now can continue filling in the spots if you'll pass that around and choose a spot in 2019 to be a moderator. And then I also wanted to mention for November and December, rather than meet on the 4th Thursday of the month, Community Forum meets on the 3rd Thursday. So that will be November 15th. We'll have a regular meeting. And then on December 20th, we will be having our holiday party. And we have a lot of fun at that party. We do a white elephant gift exchange. We do some games, and we also will order pizza. And we'll ask you to bring a food item to share at the party as well. It's at 7 p.m., and all are invited to join us on that date.
Okay, since I am moderator today, if you haven't been a moderator, it's really easy, and it's you get a chance to kind of hum and haw, and everyone sort of puts up with it. And please sign up and fill in the spaces. It's not that scary after you've got here a couple of minutes. It just sort of, you fall in place, and everyone around you helps you out. Next, a report from Marley.
Doug?
Yes?
I just want to say one thing, that the Community Forum leadership team will not meet in December.
Okay.
So you get a night off. That's the Community Forum leadership team.
Next, report from Marley Merchant.
All I've done in the office is enter emails since I began, and then I'm working on grants. That's about it. So.
All right, next on the agenda, our neighborhood council reports. And we are running kind of behind, so make them as concise as you can so we can try and get out here by 9 o'clock.
Mark Foss, Southgate Triangle. General meeting was October 11th. We had a great meeting. We were elected a few new officers and had great discussions, so thank you.
Ray Aiden, Farview's Patty Canyon. Our next neighborhood council meeting will be on Tuesday, the 4th of December. And we've got quite a range of topics, so I'm hoping there'll be good attendance, and we'll start with pizza.
Next.
Colleen Beal, Lewis and Clark. We'll have our next leadership meeting on November 7th. We are quite busy with doing some grants, and some outlying donations have come in to us for our park at Bancroft. Bancroft Steering Committee has been very busy. We have just finished a grant for the park for trails for ADA accessibility.
Jeff Stevens, South 39th Street Neighborhood Council. I was unable to attend our last leadership team meeting, so therefore I have nothing to report. Hopefully someone that was in attendance can fill us all in on that. Thank you.
This is Doug Grimm, Upper Rattlesnake. I haven't heard much happening in the Upper Rattlesnake, except people still see a deer in their yard all the time, and occasionally we'll have a bear looking for apples. Thank you.
Bert Lindner, Grand Creek. Our leadership team met a couple of weeks ago, and we've scheduled a general membership meeting at 7 p.m. December 6th in the Grant Creek Inn. We'll be discussing a number of topics, including addressing planning for the additional traffic on Reserve Street, given development planned in our part of the world, and continued discussion of the addition of southbound lanes to Grant Creek Road at the I-90 interchange. I'd like to thank the City Parks and Recreation Department, which is going to be spraying weeds along the Grant Creek Trail this fall and plowing snow on the trail this winter. The Grant Creek Trails Association donated $2,000 toward those efforts. Thank you.
Nick Shunts River Road, we sort of had a transitional leadership team meeting last night. We adopted some new bylaws. We defined roles within our leadership team. Not that exciting, but that's what we did.
Carol Garlington. The Mooscan Gully and South 39th Street leadership teams met last Monday, the 22nd, mostly to address appropriate follow-ups to the priorities list that came from the general meeting. We discussed a proposed survey to solicit some more detail about what people in our area are specifically concerned about in regard to those general priorities. And in the course of discussing this, we noticed that we might be duplicating some of the work of the city county needs assessment, and so we decided to table the local survey until we can learn the results of the city-county needs assessment. Also, finding significant overlap with the priorities in other neighborhoods, we decided to request the guidance of the community forum on how best to coordinate or join forces with other neighborhoods on issues such as urban deer or maybe transients that cannot be addressed effectively in a single area and for which some sort of professional assessment may be necessary. So anybody who has ideas on that, we would be happy to hear. We also discussed the bear buffer zone and heard about the Citizens Academy. That's it.
Thank you.
Julie Devlin, we had our Rose Park meeting yesterday. We always have it the day before this meeting. Jane did speak about the Citizens Academy. We mainly talked about our general meeting, which we had in September, and didn't talk much. We just reviewed it, and we reviewed our leadership roles at meetings, and we talked about this, a couple of the same things. The Slant Street Gateway, we're trying to figure out how to get water there because we can't really grow anything without water, so we discussed that at length. And the traffic circle again at Crosby and Cleveland, we got permission from Ben Weiss to begin in the spring, but we're waiting on a process to collect the money, and I think Jane's going to find out the legal ramifications of that. So we'll meet again the fourth Wednesday of next month. Thank you.
My name is Dave Michael Isaac. I'm with the North Side, West Side Neighborhood Council. I apologize for saying East Side last time. They had leadership team training was held on September 10th, 2018. They reviewed the leadership team duties, meetings, and dates. Positions were agreed upon by consensus. Co-chair Elisa White, Secretary Treasurer Roxanne Fisher, Community Reform Representative Dave Michael Isaac. The next meeting of the leadership meeting will be on November 6th, and we're planning a general meeting will be in some Tuesday in January. So we'll probably be discussing possible places for holding this general meeting. And that's all I have to say.
Kate Laney from Two Rivers, and I really have nothing to report.
Okay, next on the agenda is item C, and I guess we'll just forget that. And next we'll go to item D. I will be going to the city council meeting next Monday, and Jane is going to graciously type up something so I can read it to the city council and give them an idea of what we've done here. Is there anyone who would like to have something left off or add something special that we have that you'd like to have mentioned at the city council meeting? Karen?
So that'll be on 2 Mondays. There's no city council next
Okay,
Monday.
thank you very much. And Jane, would you remind me on that particular Monday, I will be finishing a meeting at 1:30. If I haven't gotten there to see you right after that, you need to give me a little buzz call and remind me to come down and get your report. Or if I have a whole.
Okay, we can talk about that Monday, okay? We'll just chat, because then we have an extra week. I didn't realize city council wasn't meeting on Monday, so we have an extra week to get that ready.
Okay, now, next meeting, Jeff Stevens will be our moderator. Is there anything someone wants to bring up here at the last minute? Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all very much.